sort of training for that. That'll come later. But the second is your skills. So what you do in practice, your stick work is super important, your shooting form, defense, then sleeping is huge. So making sure you're getting 8 hours every night, and just making sure, because if you're sleep deprived, that'll really impact your performance in a negative way. And then lastly, just what you eat, what you're putting in your body to make sure you have the most energy. And we're going to focus on that today, obviously. So my mom will talk to you a little bit about how you can gain a little bit knowledge about nutrition so you can apply it to be the best athlete you can be. So I'll turn it over.
Okay, thanks, Jules. So I guess my goal for you tonight, we have a lot of different ages here, is just that you can have some practical takeaway tips to help you with what foods and when and how you should eat. And take that information, just take away practical tips so that you can kind of elevate your game to the highest level of play. You can be the most competitive in your sport at your position or positions that's possible. And when we think about sports nutrition, it's relatively a new science. Katie, I don't know if you can think back, but it's not something that you saw a lot of at the high school or the college level or even the professional level. And now we have all these wonderful studies and lots of really great information that there are foods that you can include and ways that you can eat. And studies looked at hydration and how important that is. And you can use that information and it can really help you be as healthy as you can possibly be, which is important now. We want you healthy in your playing days, but we're thinking you have a long life ahead of you, all of you. So we want to keep you as healthy as possible. And we know that there's things that you can do with nutrition to help you do that. So I guess I just hope you can take away some tips. So let's take a look at the next slide, Joel.
Do you see the agenda?
I see the agenda. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So I want you to maybe have a respect for the role nutrition plays in athletic performance and injury prevention. So we know, I mentioned that the way you eat can help you be as competitive as possible and help you feel energized. But we also have lots of study information that shows us that eating healthfully and eating in a timely manner, not skipping meals, can help to prevent injury. And we all know that as an athlete, the last thing you want to be is sidelined with an injury. So a lot of people respect the training process. I know you guys have practices after school. I know you have probably on your teams at school, and then you go to Mesa for practice. And so respecting the practice is important, but also have you thinking about nutrition as part of that practice process and training process. That's kind of important too. Hopefully you learn a little bit about how calorie intake or energy intake is important, and when you eat is important, okay? It's important to eat 3 meals a day and maybe have a snack before practice, but also when you're finished with practice and you're finished with games and maybe in between tournaments that you have in the summertime, having something at those points can make a critical difference in how you play the following day or how you play in the following tournament game. And then we know that hydration too really can significantly enhance your performance as a lacrosse player, or it can make it can be detrimental. If you're dehydrated, it can really set you up for injury and maybe just make you feel really tired. That's the first symptom that you usually experience. And last but not least, I want you to understand why nutrition, take away a little bit of science so that you can understand why nutrition deserves as much focus and attention as all of your physical training. And those of you that are young might not be doing as much of that. Maybe our 9th grader is, but you want to think about your fueling and the way you're eating as much as you do as your physical training and all of your practices and games. Okay. So the first thing we're going to think about is the performance plate. Okay. And it's really just two pictures, but I want to call your attention to it. And if you look at the plate, there are circles. I mean, I know some people have square plates now, but usually we think about our plate as a circle. And there's a plate there for moderate training and a plate there for hard training or game day training. And if you look at the moderate training plate, you'll see that almost half of it is fruits and veggies. Um, so we're thinking about, when you look at that plate, there are things on there that are carbohydrates, which give our body energy. And you can see the carbohydrates are all of the grains, again, a little more than a quarter of the plate. And they're things like your potatoes and, grains, pastas. They are important for energy. And we're going to use the word energy and calorie almost to mean the same thing. Lacrosse has been described as the fastest sport on legs. When you play lacrosse, you use all of the energy systems, okay, that the body uses to break down things to get the energy or calories that it needs so that you can perform. And so you need a lot of energy. And we're going to talk about that and give you specific foods in a second. But energy is critical. The energy or calorie needs of lacrosse are second only to ice hockey. So I don't think people think about that, but you really need a lot of energy to maintain your muscle mass, meet the needs of the growing student athlete. We have a lot of young athletes here tonight. So you guys are still growing and you want to reach your maximum height and growth potential. So that's where all of your carbohydrates and for energy come in. If you look at the whole half of the plate, which is, or almost half, is fruits and veggies, that, people don't think as fruit as having carbohydrates, but fruit is pure, healthy carbohydrate, as is veggies. Veggies have a teeny bit of protein in them, but they're mostly carbohydrate. So there are, lots of color on your plate. And we'll talk about that in a little bit too, a little more specifically. You see the protein, just the little quarter of the plate down there in that moderate training plate is protein. And that's things like your meats and your fish and your beans and your veggies. Those things help, no, not veggies. I don't know why I said that, but all your protein, your chicken, I'd eat chicken. That's for muscle building purposes, so that you can keep your muscles as strong as possible. Fruits and veggies provide antioxidants, and you may have learned about that in school, but they just kind of prevent inflammation for the athlete. Gives you lots of vitamins and minerals, but also prevents inflammation. Healthy fats have important roles in lots of things, but primarily for immunity. And then your fluids are going to provide you with hydration. So if you look at that plate, you'll see all of those things on there. And you'll see the water or your milk or your almond milk or whatever you drink as a beverage on that plate as well. You see some spices for flavor. And then you see the fats over there are healthy fats. Because again, as I said in the beginning, we're going to be thinking about taking care of our body for a long life. So we're thinking about it for athletic performance now, but we're also thinking about keeping ourselves as healthy as possible for the duration of our life. If you look at that hard training game day plate, it's a little bit different than the moderate training. You'll notice that the entire half of the plate is carbohydrate. It's those healthy grains, it's the pastas, it's the beans, it's the potatoes, it's the rice. Why do you suppose, and I'm going to say a hard training could be a game day, but it also could be tournament day. Anybody have any idea why you might need more carbohydrate on a game day or a tournament day?
Because you need the most energy.
That's right. Perfect. You need the most energy. And then you look down in the bottom of that hard training game day, and only a quarter of it, again, is your protein, like your chicken and your fish. Beans kind of swing. Beans have carb and protein. And then you see the quarter of the plate is the veggies, because those times, those tournament days, those game days, you're going to have tremendous energy needs. Again, you guys are still growing, so you need, energy for the game, but also for your growth. Now, a lot, you read, people think that protein develops muscle, okay? But you can't build muscle without adequate calories. And we have tons of research to back that up now. So you want to make sure that you're meeting your calorie needs, your energy needs. We're going to be very general today, but I think that you'll be able to take away some tips and think about these plates, that's the way your meal should look. Now let's get a little more specific with, so what do these carbohydrates do? And you can see the little picture there. Well, they are the only thing that can fuel the working muscle, okay? They're stored as glycogen, just a fancy scientific word that means stored carbohydrate. They also, so they're fueling your muscle, but they're also providing energy to your brain. And that's a critical thing to think about when you think about the game of lacrosse, because you are streaking down the field, okay, if you're on offense, and you have to really get in position, and sometimes you're going to attack very quickly. So your brain has to be able to process the play. Your brain has to be able to survey the field. It has to look for who's open, and it has to make that pass. And that all has to happen in a split second. You guys know that better than me. You can't do that if you've been under fueling and you don't have enough carbohydrate to take care of that. Now, you might not notice or take care of those energy needs that in the beginning of a game, but you will feel the effects of that in the last 3 to 4 minutes of a game. So you want to make sure you're giving your working muscles the energy that they need. You want to make sure that you're getting enough carb to provide brain with energy. And then by having enough carbohydrate, you're going to prevent muscle fatigue. And muscle fatigue is, again, something, I'm sure you guys have felt this at the end of a practice or the end of a game. You kind of just feel like your legs are heavy. You kind of feel like, oh my gosh, I can't run one more step. And you just kind of feel spent. So making sure you're fueled properly can prevent that. Muscle fatigue, many injuries happen because of muscle fatigue. Now, I want to say that there's a lot of crazy accidents that happen in sports, injuries that are not, related. They're just crazy things that happen. But many times when the muscles are really fatigued, that's when injuries are more likely to happen. So just by making sure that plate, is either 3/4 or a half carbohydrate, you're doing all those good things for your body. The protein has a very specific role in building and repairing your muscle. And every time you go out and practice and every time you run, your protein's going to have to be repaired. And I mean, your muscles have to be repaired. And that happens with, proper eating helps that happen. If you eat enough carbohydrate, you make sure your plate looks like, 3/4 to half carb, you can make sure that you're sparing the protein, the carbohydrates providing the energy, and then you're sparing protein to go ahead and be able to build and repair your muscle. And you need about 10 grams for recovery somewhere. And we're going to talk about recovery a little bit more. So we have to worry about it in our meals, and then maybe something we might be doing in between tournament games or after a game or a practice at night. When we talked about those fruits and veggies, again, that take up half the plate on a moderate training, or, just a quarter on heavy game day or tournament day, they prevent the muscle inflammation. Veggies and fruits also give your body a lot of very important vitamins and minerals. And I'm sure you guys have learned some of this in general nutrition and health and some science classes you've had. Fruits and veggies are a fantastic source of water. Some fruits are as much as 80% water. So, for instance, watermelon has a very high water percentage, but we're going to talk about how important hydration is. You can, just by making sure you have fruits and veggies with your meals, you can make sure, or maybe again as a snack, you can make sure that that's helping with your hydration goals. Fruits and veggies are also a healthy source of carbohydrate. As I said, we don't always think about them as carbohydrate, but they're good, healthy sources of carb that give us a little bit of fiber too. The role of fats in your diet, and whether they're coming from things like avocados or salmon or nuts or olive oil, all good healthy sources, they help transport or carry vitamins throughout your body. They're very, very important for those healthy fats for long-term heart health. They provide some essential fatty acids. The only thing with our healthy fats is that they digest much slower than carbs and protein. So we're going to talk a little bit about things, eating before games or practices. They take longer to digest. So right before a game, having a little snack, or practice, having a little snack, or halftime, having a little snack. They're not times when you would want to have too much fat in your diet. We know that when you're playing, particularly a game like lacrosse, you don't want to have too many thoughts in your head. You're thinking about, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to be? What does this play look like happening? So there's a lot of things you have in your head already. You don't want to have to be thinking about, oh, my tummy hurts. So we want to make sure those healthy fats are part of our meals, and that we have a couple hours in between that our activity, our game, our practice, our tournament game, if we're going to include them in a snack. And hydration, really, really important, particularly for our younger people on the call, for everybody actually. If you're properly hydrated, you can prevent muscle fatigue and dehydration. And again, we talked about that fatigue muscle being more prone to injury, prevent headaches, muscle cramping. Again, all those things you don't want happening, during a game, during a tournament game. You want to make sure that you feel great. So being on top of your hydration is really important. I'm going to give you very specific guidelines on how to do that too. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? So we learned about some of the major nutrients that we need. We talked about the role of carbohydrate, protein, and fat in our meals. This is just what I call a performance plate, and it's just an idea of some sample meals, okay? Doesn't have to be anything fancy. And typically when I work with my athletes, I will help them individualize their meal plan, because some athletes have very specific go-to foods that they know they feel good and they can practice well with, and they feel they play their best after they've had a certain meal or foods. So this is just an example. It's not saying that you have to have that. If at questions at the end, you can say, oh, I never eat that for breakfast. I eat, an omelet, or I eat an egg white omelet, or whatever. And so you can play with this a little bit, but just to give you an idea, a whole grain bagel with a choice of topping. And then with that, a low-fat Greek yogurt with some fruits and walnuts, and then water or low-fat milk. For lunch, you might have a turkey sandwich on whole grain bread with some avocado, lettuce, tomato, your personal preference, whatever you like on there. You'll notice I put some graham crackers or some fig Newtons with that, a piece of fruit, milk or almond milk, again, preference, some water. The reason I have the graham crackers or a couple fig Newtons on there is because this is lunchtime. It is maybe a training day. You're going to have practice. It is, maybe even a game day. Just gives you an opportunity to get a little more carbohydrate into your diet in a healthy way, without too much volume in your stomach. Okay. So that's why that's there. Dinner, pasta with tomato sauce, maybe some meatballs, slice of bread, again, more carb, broccoli, side salad with a healthy oil-based salad dressing, maybe some olive oil and a little bit of balsamic vinegar, piece of fruit, and again, water or low-fat milk. So that's, as I said, just an example. But looks like a lot of food, but you want, if your portion correct, it's not that much to eat. And again, um, this is making sure you have enough carb to get you through a game without experiencing muscle fatigue, without becoming dehydrated.
Yeah, and like my mom said, this is really just an example, but I think it's helpful for girls to find like what works for them and then sticking to that. Like I know for me, I would always have like my go-to game day meals. So like pasta for the night before, and then like breakfast, maybe like pancakes and like eggs or something. And then always before the game, I would always have a turkey sandwich. So sort of just playing around with what you like and working that into like your pre-game meals. It's always good because then it helps with like planning ahead too, and you just know what to do.
That's a great point, Jewel. I think to have a go-to, and I would say more often than not, the athletes that I work with at the college or the high school level have some kind of a game day meal. And it does a couple things. It gives you confidence because you know that you eat this, you feel good, you know you're not going to get a stomach ache, you know you're not going to have to go to the bathroom during the game. So it's kind of, if you situate it, you make sure it's healthy, you make sure it's got all the nutrients that you need, and it kind of just gives you confidence that I'm not going to get fatigued during the game. I know that I feel good when I eat this. So it's not a bad idea to create something like that. Most professional athletes have a go-to game meal. So it's interesting.
Yeah. And Mom, so for the next slide, and tell me, because I don't know if I'm asking this the right way, but how long does it take to use up the energy? What do I want to say?
Use up your carbohydrate?
Yeah.
Well, that's another good question because most people who play the game of lacrosse, and this is guys and girls, don't realize, as I said, it is a very intense game, and you move from real high intensity streaking down the field to slowing down and setting up. So it uses a lot of the energy systems. It needs a lot of energy or calories. In the game of lacrosse, now we've got some younger kids here, so their games aren't as long. How long are the games for middle schoolers?
Someone's
I couldn't think of. I could have found my
Something's
unmute button.
happening.
I think I would say I haven't. I think maybe 25 minutes. Are they a little bit shorter? 20,
Yeah.
maybe 20 minute half. They're probably a little bit shorter for modified for middle school.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Any of you guys?
Their games they wouldn't have to worry, but in like a high school game of lacrosse, in about an hour, you will use up all of your stored glycogen. Okay. So it's so you really, where the research is moving is that if you have a little something, maybe a half hour before the game, and again, it doesn't have to be a lot. I mean, some of my, again, it's personal preference. Some people just have those 2 Fig Newtons. Some people have a graham cracker. Some people have a honey stinger, which is like a little wafer. I don't know if anybody's ever seen them. I think they have them in Dick's. They sell them everywhere now. Whole Foods. I don't think Trader Joe's has them yet, but they're pretty readily available, and they're just like real light. They're like a wafer and easy to digest. So you might want to have something like that an hour before the game, 30 minutes before the game, and then have a little something at halftime. And we're gonna talk about that too. But you can use up so much of your stored energy in an hour. And again, that's why tournaments, you got to have a little snack bag with you, because you guys are, Katie, is it still 3, sometimes 2, 3 games a day?
For tournaments, yeah.
Yeah. So you really
So I asked that question because how long it takes for you to use up all of your energy. When you really think about it, when you get to the high school level, and a half is 25, 30 minutes, whatever it is. You could be using up almost half of your energy. And so it's really important to have that halftime snack so that you can have your most energy and playing at your best down to the last second, because you could win or lose a game in the last 17 seconds or something. So it's really important to sort of take the time at half to restore your energy. And so more so for you guys, like my mom just said, at tournaments, I want you to think about, instead of halftime, maybe like in between games of your tournaments. And so really what's in your halftime snack bag is really, you want to find something that works for you. So like example, at Lehigh, my mom got the responsibility to pack a bag filled with a bunch of snacks. And the reason why there were so many is because a lot of the girls had different preferences. So like for me, I would typically have an applesauce and 2 Fig Newtons, and then like maybe like 2 gulps of Gatorade. So really just finding out what works for you. A lot of girls would have one of those honey stingers in the bottom right, or even I know for tournaments, when it was like a super hot day, my mom, and sometimes like after tournaments, you really just don't feel good. You're like, and that's sometimes when you're dehydrated. So it's really important. My mom would say, I would be like, oh mom, like I just ran so much, like I really don't feel good. She's like, well, you need something. So what she would have me do is lick the salt off the pretzel rod and then just have some Gatorade. Something you just want to work. Some girls have trouble eating. They're like, oh, I'm not used to that. And it's really because you have to train your gut. So practicing and training your gut to sort of accept this in the middle of playing is huge too. Yeah, Mom, anything to add?
No, that's good points. And that's something that, you know, for the older, I think we had a 9th grader, I always say, you know, the training the gut concept, it's not something we're making up. It's been researched and it's something that's very real. So you want to do that off season. Obviously, you want to practice maybe having a little something. We didn't talk about timing of meals. So we looked at that like turkey sandwich meal, that lunch meal. That takes about 3 to 4 hours to digest. So that would be like lunchtime at school, and then you're having, and I know the lunches are kind of scattered depending on your class schedule and all that kind of stuff. But a meal like that takes about 3 to 4 hours to digest. And that's typically at lunchtime. And then to have something light, like a honey sticker or a couple pretzel rods or a couple Fig Newtons, that takes about a half hour to digest, to an hour, actually. So you want to make sure that you're kind of not having real heavy things. You're having things like this in between tournaments or at half times of games. I even suggest half times of games. So a full meal is going to take you 3 to 4 hours, but something light, you know, depending on the volume, would only take about 30 minutes to an hour. And again, you'll know none of these things here have a lot of fat, because we talked about, you know, we talk about applesauce and you talk about pretzel rods, there's no fat. Fig Newtons, they're fat-free. The honey stinger has no fat. The applesauce has no fat because it takes too long to digest. So they won't be things that you'll have at halftime, or if you only have an hour before a game, 45 minutes to an hour before a game, you're going to have something that's extremely low fat or doesn't have fat. And Jules, another point you made that I think is really important for the girls and the younger girls, because you guys are young in your career, you have your whole careers ahead of you, which is really exciting. You know, it's just, lacrosse is such a great sport, but every time you play, you want to be able to play the last minute of that game and feel the same way as you felt when you put your foot on the field to play the first minute of the game. And if you really pay attention to eating correctly day in and day out, and maybe giving the snacks the little bit of respect that they deserve, you'd be surprised. You know, you won't run out of energy, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So I know it's so tempting when you're at tournaments. They have such good food to like just have a cheeseburger, like some ice cream, but save that till your last game and then you can celebrate. But in the middle of tournaments, when you have games back to back, try and stick to these and then celebrate after with the good stuff.
you can experiment, when with the college girls, the Lehigh girls, everybody, one girl hated fig Newtons and somebody else loved them. One girl would only have a small clementine. That's all she could tolerate. Another girl, which might have been Jewel, would drink an applesauce, and you might think, well, and other people would say, I really have a hard time eating anything. So I would say, even if you took 2 little clementine segments, you're getting a couple grams of carbohydrate. Take that, and then maybe next week you can have 3 segments, and maybe the following week you can have 4 segments. So, if you are volume sensitive when you play, and that's pretty common, just take the smallest bit of something in that carbohydrate line will help you. And the other thing I might mention is what you find is when you are glycogen or your carbohydrate stores are a little bit low or you're dehydrated, you can feel a little bit nauseous, and that might be when you really need a little something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so hydration, really important. So the food piece, I think we talked a lot about. You might have questions, but we'll talk about, you can ask them at the end, but the hydration piece is the other thing. You want to hydrate early and often. Again, a lot of you are still growing. And we know, again, from really good research that dehydration can really negatively impact performance and make you fatigue early. And so you really want to get in the habit of focusing on fluid intake all day, every day. Make your water bottle, they have such nice stainless steel ones out there now. Get one you love and that you feel comfortable carrying, and get yourself in the habit of sipping water all day long. Not just around your workout. Sometimes it's easier, we're, natural to pick up the water bottle when we go to practice or when we're going to work out, but you want to get in the practice of, making your water bottle like your friend and hydrating all day long. And if you looked at those meal plans that we had up with the plate pictures, you'll notice that, there was water and milk on there, because you really, nothing wrong with having your milk or your almond milk and then a little bit of water with that. The other thing I think that's really important for you to think about is dehydration can set in really quickly. And Katie, I don't know if that ever happened to you in your playing career, but Jules and I have talked about that at length, and it's something that you really should sort of stay, it's easier to stay on top of it, because once you become dehydrated during a game, it's really hard to get yourself at a proper hydration level again. So it's something you want to stay on top of. So before exercise, you want to make sure you're well hydrated. And then you want to have about 16 ounces a couple hours before exercise, okay? And then right before you take the field to practice, so that would be at lunch, maybe, if it's a school day, something you can handle at home if you're at home. And then right before practice or a game, you're going to have your water bottle. You want to have about 8 ounces of water about 15 minutes before you practice. Now, you might say, how do you do that? Just to give you a little guideline, 1 gulp is about an ounce. Okay. So if you can get in about 8 gulps, take a couple gulps, kind of getting your equipment situated on the field, take another couple gulps, getting your goggles on, another couple gulps, and you're almost there. Okay. During exercise, you want to drink some kind of water, or, I'm not a big proponent of telling people to use Gatorade as a beverage. But again, in the sports world, not so much for the younger girls, but for the girls that are in high school and maybe thinking about playing in a collegiate environment, just a couple sips of Gatorade, particularly if you've had a bad week, you've had a lot of schoolwork, can kind of help you with hydration. After exercise, you want to hydrate. And, you guys aren't doing this as you get older in college. We might be evaluating how much fluid you need by weight. We do not recommend that for the younger girls. I would say for you guys, the best way to gauge if you're hydrating, and this might sound a little gross, but particularly for our high schooler on the call, if you look at your first morning urine and it's like the color of a light lemonade, you're well hydrated. If it's golden or dark yellow, you probably need to work on your hydration. So when you go to tournaments this summer and you come home the morning after a tournament, look at your urine and see, but you want a light lemonade colored first morning urine. And then you look at the last line there, chocolate milk is a great option to help rehydrate and refuel after a workout. Just a little bit about chocolate milk. And you don't need, you can use this fat-free chocolate milk or 1% fat. You don't need a real rich chocolate milk. But chocolate milk really has the carbohydrate. When for recovery, we're looking for carbs and proteins and electrolytes, and it does all three. It has all three of those things in it. It's got carbohydrate, it's got protein, and it's got electrolytes, so not a bad thing, and it's very inexpensive. And for the older person on the call, when you get to high school and you're driving, it's easy to stop at Wawa and get something like that. And you can even get the shelf stable kind of chocolate milk too, if you want to keep it, doesn't have to be refrigerated. So recovery to me is the name of the game when taking care, it's very, very, very important. And when we talk about recovery, we're talking about what do you do after practice, or what do you do after a game, or what do you do after a tournament game? Do you just not eat? Do you just drink water? I mean, water is important. You got to work on your hydration, but it's really important to have a little something to provide the muscles with some carbohydrate and protein. Every time you work out, every time you play a game, every time you run, your muscles, not too many people knit anymore, but your muscles are kind of, if you look at them under a microscope, they're kind of knitted and woven together. And every time you work out, there are little teeny tiny micro tears that happen in the muscle. And so what the protein does, and having a little snack after a practice or a game or a tournament game, helps kind of the muscles sort of be able to knit back together after the workout and come back even stronger. And that happens with, any kind of lifting or training you might do as you get older. And then, so it gives you carb, it gives you protein. The chocolate milk will actually give you the electrolytes too, and fluid. But if you're not a milk drinker, there's other things that you can do. It's going to replace all the muscle carbs that you used while you practiced or played a game. And then it's going to, again, help those damaged muscles heal and kind of knit back together and become stronger. I forgot to mention, we were talking about little snack before games. When we were talking, Jules had that little snack bag picture up there. It's even in the middle of a game, you're recovering. If you have that halftime snack, you're helping the recovery process a little. You're not letting your stores get too low. And then critically important is after you play, to have a little something. So if you go to a Mesa practice and it takes place when, Katie, at night?
Yeah, most will be in the evening for the girls, yes.
And so they may or may not have had dinner.
Yeah,
Right?
it'll probably be kind of in the mix.
Okay.
For some of them.
So if you guys have an early dinner, when you come home from practice, you're going to have a little snack. I mean, maybe you're going to have a little bit of yogurt and a little piece of fruit. Maybe you're going to have some apple slices. Maybe you're going to have a low-fat string cheese. Maybe you're going to have a little bit of peanut butter with a handful of pretzels. Like I said, it doesn't have to be this major volume of food. It's just, trying to replenish what you lost in practice or play. And if you have dinner, so some of you might have dinner before, some might have after. If you're the family, your family has dinner later, then you want to have a little snack before practice. And so that, again, doesn't have to be a whole lot. I mean, Jules sometimes would have a half of a peanut butter sandwich with some apple slices. Remember, Jewel? But that will kind of, not let your stores drop too low of your carbohydrate and just kind of carry you through when you play. And then you'll go to practice and you'll come home and have dinner. And then your dinner would act as recovery for you. Okay. Another question I like athletes to think about is, are they feeding or are they fueling? Are they a feeder or are they a fueler? Are they a fueler? And if you're feeding, what that means is you're eating only when you feel hungry. You're not eating, 3 meals a day and a couple of snacks. You're only eating when you feel hungry. You tend to skip meals. You're going to eat whatever is around and looks good. Your meals are really based on convenience and taste. Now, the younger people on this call, your family members are probably handling all that for you, so you're not in that situation. But the high schooler on that call could be moving into a situation like this. Things are poorly timed and kind of random. So what happens, and again, we've studied this, is it's, most of the time you're not getting enough calories in. And calories, again, we use the calories and energy, they mean the same thing. Your muscles aren't getting what they need. They're not getting the carbohydrate that they need. Your endurance is weakened. We talked about you had to have enough calories, and you guys are still growing. So calories to cover the exercise, calories to cover the growth. If we don't have enough calories, we're not going to be able to muscle build. If we can't have muscle building, we're not as strong. If we're not as strong, we're not as fast. So it kind of just tumbles along there. You increase fatigue, and you can catch a lot of colds, and it can affect your immune system. What usually happens to young, healthy people is they'll have more colds in a season than they typically do. If you're a fueler and you're, an athlete who really respects nutrition as part of the training and the game process, you're strategically planning your meals. You're going to have breakfast, lunch, dinner. You're going to have a little snack before practice, and you're going to have a little snack before or after dinner, depending on when you eat dinner and when your practice time is. You're going to eat regularly and consistently. You create a habit of kind of just eating regularly. You're making sure you get the carb in based on your individual needs. You're meeting your body's needs for training and competition. You're thinking about having a little something before you step on the field for a game. You're thinking about having something very small during halftime of a game, and you're thinking about recovering after the game with dinner or, a recovery, even if it's just chocolate milk, just a recovery snack. It doesn't have to be anything big. What are the benefits of being a fueler? Well, it helps prevent injury because you're helping prevent muscle fatigue. You're going to have enhanced health. You're just going to be healthier. You're going to get all those vitamins and minerals from, think about, again, that performance plate. And you're going to perform at your peak level. Again, we know, and I've seen it happen. I've been doing this for about 30 years. You can take an average athlete and they can become a great athlete just by paying attention to how you're taking care of your body, as Jules said. How are you eating? How are you nourishing yourself? Are you eating at the right times? Are you recovering? Are you sleeping? All those things can really, really affect your athletic performance and help you move to a really high level. And most people surprise themselves. Am I right, Jewel? Most people are like, it was a game changer for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, takeaway tips from Mesa Lacrosse, the Mesa Lacrosse athlete. Fueling, I can't see that last slide, Jewel. What do I have there? Let me see something. Can you read the first? I can't see it. No.
Yeah, you pretty much covered everything, but fueling is a part of your training. So just like,
yeah.
you said.
Okay. It pays to have a plan. So, eating healthfully is just like anything else we do in life. It's hard to be like that haphazard eater. You have to be thinking ahead, like, okay, I'm going to eat 3 times a day. Tomorrow I have a game. Maybe I'm going to pack a clementine. Maybe I'm going to pack a little thing of applesauce. Maybe I'm going to pack a honey stinger. I can just throw 5 of them in my bag. They don't need to be refrigerated. They never go bad. And my mom knows where to get them. So with a little bit of planning and a little tiny bit of extra thought, this kind of becomes easier. It seems like a lot when you look at the plates and you think, oh my gosh, I got to do all this. But like thinking about it ahead and having a plan can really help. Breakfast is for champions. Many people that I work with are not breakfast eaters for lots of different reasons. You guys go to school so early today. I mean, some of the middle schools start very early. But when you miss breakfast, again, think about it the night before. You miss out on a whole opportunity to get all the calories in, the energy, and the nutrients in. So, if you're not a breakfast eater, you might want to start really small and train your gut, as we talked about earlier, and get creative with ways that you could maybe even get something small in, because you don't want to, you give up an opportunity, particularly on game days. As you move into middle school and high school and you have games after school, it can make the difference in the world for you. Rethink your, I can't say that word there. What do I have?
Your lunch.
Rethink your lunch, rethink your school lunch. Okay. So, some of you may bring your lunch, some of you may buy at school, but when you go through that lunch line, I want you thinking, what's going to help me in my game today? Something not too high fat. Let me get the piece of fruit. Do they have veggies? Do they have something healthy? I want you thinking about your pre and post practice snack. Do I have something in my bag, my lacrosse bag for, snack? Do I have something, for tournament? Critically important for tournament because you guys play so many games. And then thinking about that athlete's plate for dinner, that having at least 2/3 to the whole half be full of fruits and veggies, the quarter with the protein, the other quarter with the healthy starch, and then some kind of milk or almond milk and water, all part of that. Think of your plate as an athlete's plate. It's a good little, I'm a big believer in mantras, when you need encouragement. This is my athlete's plate. And as I said, athletes aren't musicians. They need, especially lacrosse players, they need a lot of energy just to play a game. We talked about you can use up all your stored carb in an hour. You need a lot of energy because there's so much movement in the game. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Nothing, guys?
What's an example of a fat?
Well, what's an example of
A fat.
a fat? Great question. So, good healthy fats would be things like avocado. Avocado is so healthy, but it's pure fat. Mayonnaise. Nuts are pure fat. They're healthy fat, but they're fat nonetheless. Fried foods would be something that, like a piece of fried chicken might have that protein that is part of that healthy diet. But if you're frying it in oil, that would contribute fat to the chicken. Cream cheese is fat. Butter is fat. Oil is fat. And some oils are healthier than others, like your olive oil and your canola oil and your avocado oil are all healthy, but they're fat. So even we talked about, I don't know if you're asking the question, because we talked about not too much fat right before you take the field. Even those healthy fats take a long time to digest. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone know how many nuts are a serving size? So nuts are fat and they're a healthy fat. Does anyone know how many nuts, or can take a guess? Throw a number out there.
12.
How many? 12?
Yeah, 12.
Anyone else?
It's pretty good.
All right, Mom, what's the answer?
11.
Oh,
That's good too.
we got the under.
So that's great. So if we're talking almonds, like 6 to 8 almonds is a serving. So when we talk about volume, we talked about, you should have a little something, but it doesn't have to be a whole lot. And even that little something might help. It's not a lot of nuts. Walnuts, it's 4 halves. That's a serving of walnuts. It's like 4 halves. I forgot to mention about almonds. Is there anybody on this call that likes almonds as a snack?
Me.
Okay. That's great, because there's some pretty interesting research on almonds that they can actually help with muscle integrity. So, having maybe 6 to 8 almonds with your chocolate milk as a snack might be not a bad idea to think about. Can maybe help your muscles a little bit. Helps
was a
with
good-
inflammation.
That was a good
Okay.
question, though.
Excellent
Ne-
question.
Anyone have anything else? A few more minutes.
Anything else, guys? What's I have a quick question. So this is one thing I deal with my athletes a little bit, and I'm pretty sure I probably know what you're gonna say. But what would you, I guess, the difference between like really making sure you use that fuel, but also not getting caught up in like the diet culture that's on like Instagram and social media, and how they're like, oh, low carbs, keto, all that, all those different kind of like, I feel like everybody has a fad diet now. Like, what do you suggest, like, for especially middle schoolers and then high schoolers who are like thrown into that with all that stuff kind of thrown at them?
So that's a great question, Katie. And it's something that I have to deal with all the time in my practice. So the most important thing when it comes to sports nutrition and health is making sure you're getting information from the right source. Okay. And so because I'm a licensed health practitioner, you want to make sure that we have to work with evidence-based science. So concepts that have been well researched in well-designed studies. So what does that mean for young people? I would say when you follow somebody on Instagram or when you look for nutrition information, you want to make sure that that individual is licensed in the state or states that they're practicing in. So you're going to look for a registered dietitian. You're going to look for those credentials, RDN. They're all over Instagram. You're going to look for that credential. You can look at my professional organization, the Academy of Nutrition, has a website. It's www.eatright.org. And I can give that to you so you can send out to the girls. It has all kinds of nutrition information. They have a website that's just for the public. They have recipes, they have information, and it's all reputable. I can tell you with confidence that the studies that we have on the keto diet so far, it does not help athletic performance. Okay. But if you're looking for good, reputable information, whether it be on social media, whether it be in a book, you want to look for those credentials of the RDN, the registered dietitian nutritionist, and you want to look for that license, the LDN after that, because trying to find good science information, you want to make sure that what's out there has been properly researched and promotes health.
Yeah. The other thing I would say, just from like a general advice standpoint, more so not like as like a registered dietitian would say, but balance is really key in all aspects of life. And when you really think about it, if you are extreme dieting, so if you're saying, oh, I'm not eating X, does that sound balanced? Or like, I'm not eating before noon. Okay, is that balanced? Like, it's not. Whereas if you're eating 3 meals a day spaced out with the right portions, that is more balanced, and that's actually when people like feel better about themselves. Whereas if you're cutting back or extreme dieting, you tend to like feel really tired and just feel really bad about your own self. So I would just put it in the perspective of being balanced, and it's really all about your portions. The other thing I would say, if you are looking to lose weight, some people, there's like buckets. Some people are trying to lose weight, some people are trying to maintain their weight, and some people are trying to gain weight, so they need to put on muscle. And going back to the performance plate, there is a light training. So my mom would always say, you never worry about your weight in season, because that's when you need to perform the most. That's when you need to eat like the heavy performance plate. If you are looking to change your weight, so either put on muscle or take or lose some weight, you do that off season, and that's when you adjust the portions of the performance plate, so you won't be eating as many carbs.
Right.
So yeah, again, just like balance and really timing. There's a time to lose weight and there's a time to sort of maintain it.
And that's a good point, Joel. And I might mention that anytime you take out a whole food group, anytime you take out carbohydrates or you miss out on nutrients that particular food group is offering. So
Yeah, and then just a final note. I know you girls are young and in middle school, and this might seem like a lot of information. The last thing that we want is for you to be overwhelmed by this. Food is amazing. I don't know, I'm sure, like, I eat dinner and then I'm like, wow, I can't wait for breakfast tomorrow. Like, food, we don't want anyone to be stressed about eating and feel like, oh, I need to do this because Mrs. Drazio said this. Like, absolutely not. If you have any questions about how to make your own performance plate, depending on like, oh, I don't like turkey sandwich or whatever, you can, Katie will give you our information. You can always reach out and we can help you like sort of do like something that caters to what you like. So the last thing, if you get anything away from today, we want you to know that food helps you in all aspects of your life, and it should be fun for you.
food is fun. That's right. That's our motto. Food is fun.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. This was so great. And just like Joel said, guys, if you need anything, just reach out. We can connect you. They can help you make your performance plate, think about different things. Or if you just have any questions that you weren't really comfortable discussing, we can just connect you guys and you guys can feel free to ask. That would be awesome. But this was great. Super helpful. Loved
Yeah.
it, guys. Some great information. But
Last
go
thing,
ahead.
I miss you guys. I miss working with you and, and having practice, but I hope you're all doing well.
For sure.
And I just want to say thank you. And I wish you guys all the best with lacrosse and with every little thing. So wish you all the best.
Great. Well, thank you so much, guys. Bye.